Take me out to the ball game. All right, are you ready, Mr. Hernandez?
Ready to go, Count.
Okay, batter up, play ball. I the count them ready. Pitch it to me, Mookie Wilson, baby.
Thank you, Count Von Count. This is Ray Hernandez. Yes.
Welcome to the Sesame Street edition of Behind the Bag.
Yes.
Hey, there we are.
All right, Johnny Ice. This is Ray Hernandez, joined by Johnny Ice for Behind the Bag.
Got it right this week, folks.
All right, episode 7. I'm really excited. In case you haven't figured it out, we are going to be talking about Mookie Wilson today, who, thanks to our friends on Twitter, we learned that this past week was his 65th birthday.
That's right. Happy birthday to Mookie. One of the most important figures in not even Mets history, in baseball history. One play said it all. But we're gonna go back and we're gonna take everybody through Mookie's career. But really, I think everybody who knows anything about sports knows the name Mookie Wilson.
Absolutely, and today is also the 29th anniversary of Seinfeld and Keith Hernandez being on Seinfeld. And for those of you that have watched that episode, know that Mookie is mentioned by Elaine Bennis.
Let me refresh your memory.
June 14th, 1987. Mets, Phillies. You made a big error, cost the Mets the game. Then you're coming up the parking lot ramp.
You said, nice game, pretty boy.
Keith Hernandez, probably the favorite player between us on this show. I couldn't believe 1992 for Seinfeld. We're working on, we probably won't be able to get Jerry Seinfeld. We're working on Larry David to come on the show. I think that would be great.
That would be pretty good, John.
That's
Not
right.
Great.
That's right.
It would be pretty good.
Look at here, Larry. Look at here. So we're going to try to get him on the show. But if not, we'll still go on because we have announcements. Our announcement list, Ray, is getting longer and longer every week. I think this is super exciting.
Definitely. So yeah, definitely. Before we get to Mookie, I think we have to look at the week that was. And once again, the Mets have made a couple of moves. Where do you want to start? Because there's quite a few. Obviously, my boy Steven Matz will get a mention once again.
That's right. I think before we go to Matz, let's just talk about the Jonathan VR signing again, because we are the ones of utility players. We always go on a Saturday
kind of
or Sunday. That's
there
right. We always go Saturday or Sunday. We almost have the same initials. It's pretty awesome. And we're just, Ray and I are just bound to see this guy in at least 2 different positions when we go to see the game. That's for sure.
And it'll be the same game on top of that.
That's right. And what we learned is that he was 2 for 14 with 8 strikeouts against Jacob deGrom. So basically he came to New York to be on the same team as one of his hardest to face pitchers.
If you can't beat him, join him, right?
That's right.
Speaking of joining him, Mets also acquired Khalil Lee. So as we talked about, in many ways, he is the follow the trade lines, we talked about the 3 degrees of, oh man, I'm going to forget the player's name it was a couple episodes ago. Wait a minute.
Yes, it was the 3 degrees. Oh my God. And I challenged everybody the 3 degrees, and we forgot what guy it was. Excellent. Omar Minaya.
That's right.
3 degrees of Omar Minaya. So I was thinking of Todd Zeal already. I was changing our competition.
So now, just like that, we're going to have the 3 degrees of Steven Matz. First up is Khalil Lee, who was acquired this week from our friends in a 3-way deal with Kansas City and Boston. They didn't give us the 2015 World Series ring, but they gave us Khalil Lee, who was the number 8th prospect for the Royals. Comes in, and now, just like that, he's the 7th prospect.
That's right. He came right into our lineup of prospects, jumped into the 7th slot, and you never know how soon we'll be seeing him. But we are both always excited about building the farm system and getting some prospects back from whatever not Jed, we'll get to Jed, from whoever Brody Van Wagenen took away from us, which is a perfect segue to kind of whatever reverse happy trails is to Jed Lowry, who is back to the Oakland A's on a minor league deal. Good riddance. He took, I think, $20 million from the Mets for
highway robbery. Highway robbery
appearances, maybe 8. I don't know.
And Jed Lowry, I'm calling it now, is going to be the AL comeback player of the year because that's just the way it works.
Easy enough. That's what's going to happen with Jed. So, we always have to weave in Brody Van Wagenen, unfortunately, every week.
And let us not forget that, some exciting news in New York. I mean, obviously I'm based in Connecticut, but as a Met fan, there is some hope with the governor's announcement of allowing 10% of, open air stadiums to have fans. So maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to go to a game in 2021.
Yeah, I actually got a text from my sister this morning, and we got tickets for sometime in June.
Nice.
Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, as our friends say in Georgia. So hopefully that comes through. It's just nice to put something on the calendar because it is very open these days.
Yes, yeah, that's needless to say. Now, we have that tradition of going to games in April, so maybe this year we'll have to go to a game in September to get that nice, cold, crisp feel.
Yeah. Either way, we have to layer up. The other thing that's a tradition is a tradition on our podcast to mention Bobby Jones. So Ray, why don't you tell what's going on with Bobby Jones this past week?
Well, Bobby Jones is now going to have more mentions on this podcast than the man named Ant, which all right, I guess
we didn't get there yet. Don't bury the lead on Ant.
All right, sorry. All right, yeah. How come he hasn't been on our show yet? I mean, not for nothing.
His price is going up every time we mention him.
Well, anyway, Bobby Jones, for those that don't know, we've got a man crush on him. 51st birthday today or this week?
I know it was this week. I don't know if it was actually today. Yeah. He'll let us know.
Well, yeah. Maybe he'll come on our show.
That's right.
But happy birthday, Bobby Jones. Happy belated birthday. And yeah, what do you say we go to another birthday boy, Mr. Mookie Wilson?
That's it. We're going to move on to Mookie Wilson. This is the official beginning of the Mookie Wilson podcast.
Brought to you by the letter M. Yes. No, that's a letter. You can't laugh at letters.
Strike one. All right. We've got Mookie Wilson. Mookie, born William Hayward Wilson, 1956 in Bamberg, South Carolina, a city of roughly 3,500 people.
Also, the number of fans at Shea Stadium in the early 1980s.
Right, I thought you were going to have a Bamberg, South Carolina story for me. No. I was going to be like, one time I was driving out of Florida and got stuck in Bamberg, South Carolina. Hell of a 7-Eleven down there. He got the name Mookie as a small child. I was a little disappointed we didn't get a better story about that because nicknames is something that's very important over here.
So I had read, I don't know how true this is, but I had read that he got the nickname Mookie as a kid because he couldn't pronounce the word milk as a kid. And so they called him Mookie as a tease, and it kind of stuck. I don't know how true that is, but that is what I seem to recall.
We're going to go with it. I like it. Let's go with it.
You heard it here, folks.
So Mookie. Not
to be confused with Milky Cabrera, but
yeah,
yes.
There's Milky, Mookie, and the infamous Nucci Morris, who played for the New York Knicks. But Mookie was a pitcher in high school and attended Spartanburg Methodist College. So this was really interesting. He apparently had committed to South Carolina State University. And after he signed his letter of intent, they actually shut down the baseball program.
Oh, man.
So that was an interesting story that I read. Wow. So after going to Spartanburg Methodist College, he was drafted in the 4th round by the Dodgers in '76 and decided not to sign because Mookie knew he was better than that, right? 4th round, not good enough. So Mookie transferred to the University of South Carolina, and they actually went all the way to the College World Series, losing to Arizona State. I didn't see any, famous names in there when I did a little research, and then ended up getting, his little his little risk, his bet paid off because he ended up getting selected in the 2nd round of the 1977 draft by the New York Mets.
And that's why you always bet on yourself, folks. You always bet on yourself.
Now here's interesting, Ray. who he was drafted ahead of in the 77 draft. Do you see those names there?
What do we got
Ozzie
here?
Smith,
Wow, the wizard.
Tim Rock, the original Rock.
The original
Reigns.
Rock.
Yeah. Jesse Barfield, who just was one of like the jacked all-time players.
Oh, yeah.
Before, of course, the 90s. And Chili Davis.
Hey, it all comes together. Hey, fun fact, Jesse Barfield and I have the same birthday.
Oh, there you go.
Here it is.
I thought your fun fact was going to be, I went to Chili's tonight.
No. By the way, I always ask you, what'd you have for dinner tonight?
Oh, went to East Harbor, Chinese food on Central Avenue. By the childhood home of Anthony. By the way. He's gonna have to pay us for these broadcasts. I can tell you that.
Absolutely. That's pretty interesting though, that he was drafted ahead. I guess if I look at that list, that's great company, first of all. And I don't know that I can dispute drafting Mookie ahead of any of those players. I mean, Ozzie obviously is a Hall of Famer, but I mean, if you're in the market for an outfielder, Tim Raines, Jesse Barfield, Chili Davis, I'd take Mookie over all three of those.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those guys, what Mookie brought to the table is very different, and I think the energy and everything that they needed. Once we fast forward and get to the the 80s teams, it's kind of what they needed. But yes, definitely interesting seeing Ozzie Smith on there, one of the all-time greatest shortstops. But yeah, while he was in the minors, he was the International League Rookie of the Year, 1979. He stole 50 bases and scored 92 runs for our favorite Mets minor league team of all time, the Tidewater Tides.
The Tidewater Tides. The thing about the Tidewater Tides is quite amazing. I think Tidewater and Norfolk, right? Those were like and I actually don't know if Tidewater and Norfolk are the same thing. I probably should look at that. But when I see the Tides, I always think of David Wright, to be very honest with you. The stories of David Wright going to the Norfolk or Tidewater, whatever they were, Tide games. It's actually quite amazing that David wound up being a Met. It's only fitting.
Yeah, my memory of Tidewater is reading the back of baseball cards, and you usually see the major league teams on the back, and all of a sudden you see Tidewater or some odd abbreviation for Tidewater, and then it's like, what is that? And that was like my first taste of minor league baseball, is just reading and trying to figure out what it was from the back of a baseball card.
I gotta tell you, speaking of the back of the baseball card, I might tweet this out. So on Etsy, I got my new bookmark. It's a Keith Hernandez bookmark made out of his old baseball cards.
What brand are those? Are those Score, Fleer? What do we got there?
So this right here is Sportflix, which
Sportflix, okay.
Never heard of in my life.
Do they move?
They do, yeah.
Oh, so they're lenticulars.
When you go one way, it's his bio picture. On the other way, it's Keith's swing, which is pretty amazing. But the back of his baseball card, yeah.
I actually bring up in meetings Sportflix because we have some things that are lenticulars, which is the fancy word for what that does, the transition. Nobody knows what the hell I'm talking about, though. When I bring up Sportflix. After
I tweet this picture out, the 29 people that follow Behind the Bag podcast 2 will know about it. Another interesting fact, though, growing up as a kid with the baseball cards, huge collector, always trying to get the gum out of it. I used to drag my grandfather to the corner store just so that I can, get these cards. But that's how I really learned a lot of our cities in the U.S., right? Because the Mets had like Jackson as a AA team. I had no idea what Jackson was. So, pre-internet, I'd find books or whatever it was, but I'd look up where are these cities? So I'd like to thank Topps for teaching me U.S. geography.
Shout out to Topps. I bet they didn't know that was one of the things that they're responsible for. And the price of baseball cards just went up again. I think that's what happened.
Absolutely. But when we go back to 1980, he's basically the infamous September call-up.
Yeah, I mean, stealing 50 bases, I think that was enough for a call-up. The manager at the time, which I forgot, Joe Torre was the manager of the Mets in 1980. So he brought up Mookie, started his career 0 for 8, but then all of a sudden, he found himself playing in the majority of the games down the stretch.
Well, because Joe Torre just knows talent. That's jokes on us. But anyway, I will say this. This is a very interesting. So one of the books I have, this coffee table book. It's the New York Mets photographic history, probably produced in '97. George Kalinsky, who is a famous photographer. A lot of his photos are MSG. In fact, I actually think he was the official photographer of MSG for decades. So this is great picture book. I actually bought it at a tag sale for $1, which I absolutely know was a steal.
Go back to that house and give him another $5.
Somewhere in Yonkers, New York. But there's a picture of Mookie Wilson, and the blurb is, he arrived at just the right time, a breath of fresh air for a team that had been choking on its own fumes. Mookie Wilson played all-out baseball, and he'd do anything to win. You'd be surprised, he said, how many ways there were to steal a run. He patrolled the outfield and raced around the bases for most of the decade, the 1980s, that is. And he's still the Mets' all-time leader in steals and triples at 281 and 62. That goes to show you how old this is, because I think Jose Reyes has broken
it's
all
pre-Jose
those records.
Reyes, yes.
But just the fact that he arrived at the right time, it's true when you think about how horrible those late 70s, early 80s teams were. I mean, I think at one point the slogan was "The magic is back," and I think the next year it was "The tragic is back," if I recall correctly. So poor Mookie had to go through that until we turned it around.
Well, and the way you mentioned how he was characterized, it's typical for those players that the Mets and New York fans overall fall in love with are these hustling players that are just scrappy, usually, fast, play hard, maybe not filling up the stat sheet, but always fan favorites. I see that a lot with the Knicks, and you have certain like defensive players on the Giants, and of course the Rangers, where it's that kind of hustle that the New York crowd, they'll just love you for. I mean, it's really, that's all you need.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing, I guess as a kid, just random Mookie memories. Like I always remember him, just running around the bases. Like when you look at his stats, they're not always great. I couldn't tell you that he missed. I mean, granted, I was, 4 or 5 years old, but, missed months in the 85 season, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Missed months in 86, missed some time here, batted, 190, in 89 or so. I don't think of that. I just think of somebody that's just flying around the bases and, always seems to be losing his hat in the outfield when you look at some of those replays. And to your point, it's that hustle and grit that, kind of defines Mookie Wilson.
Yeah, well, Keith these days has a term while he's giving a little color commentary called Cadillacing, and I don't think that's something that Mookie would ever do.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
But moving into 81, so he was a September call-up in 80. In 81, he got off to a slow start again, with his average was 203 on May 24th. So I don't know, he might have been on the interstate in April. So Joe Torre decided to shift Lee Mazzilli to left field and made room for Mookie in center, and it seemed like something clicked for Mookie once he got his favorite position, which was center field. So 81 was actually a strike shortened season, but he ended up the first half with hitting 288 with 11 stolen bases and a 340 on base percentage. So, it's interesting over the years. We've seen that, especially with the Mets. We've talked about Carlos Beltran and Mike Cameron, and we had the Kaz Matsui at second base. That, I mean, it seems like we've lived through this a lot, and a lot can be said for a player being in the position that they actually, strive to be at and excel at.
Yeah, definitely. And, it was very interesting, too, because I think there was some heat between Mazzilli and Mookie and Lenny Dykstra eventually when Lenny comes up. It's just this logjam that was created. I mean, at one point, the Mets traded for Alice Valentine from Montreal. And, you just had this glut of outfielders. So really hard to kind of, make your way, if you will.
Yeah, and like we were saying before about the records that Jose Reyes did break at the time in 82, he stole one base in each of his first 5 games. So that was at the time Frank Tavares's record. You know,
I don't even know who he is.
Yeah, exactly.
Frank Tavares,
who also had the team record for 58 stolen bases in a year. So Mookie broke that, and he also broke Lee Mazzilli. So maybe this was why Lee Mazzilli was a little chapped. All-time stolen bases, but they were both broken eventually by Jose Reyes. And I could pretty firmly, confidently say I'm not sure those are records that'll ever be broken by the Mets, because the game is just changing so much that stolen base records I don't think are something that's going to change.
No, not unless your name is Billy Hamilton or whatever, whoever we just signed, Villar. It'll be interesting to see, that's for sure.
Shout out to former Met Billy Hamilton signing a minor league deal. I would like to know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars per hit we paid Billy Hamilton last year, because he got 22. One of them. That's right.
It still burns me that one play, which thank God they cut him afterwards, with like stealing third for no reason and getting thrown out, no less.
So the tying run, the speedy Hamilton is in scoring position. Takes off for third, swing and a miss, throw to third. Oh, they got him. What was Hamilton thinking going to third there? And Higashioka got him with a perfect throw.
I don't know if you remember that game, but
yes, and he's definitely not going to have an episode of Behind the Bag anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll ever talk about him again. So what are your Billy Hamilton memories, John?
You know, he started out super fast. It reminds me of Carl Crawford. Remember Joey Gallo? Was that his name? Joey Gallup?
Isn't that Joey Gallo? Isn't that the guy from My Cousin Vinny? Isn't that what they call him?
Joey Gallup? Who was the guy on the Tampa Bay Rays? Oh,
stumps me.
One of our loyal Carl Crawford was one, but I believe it was Joey Gallup who didn't have a long year.
We got to 85, and this was the pieces were falling into place for that team. And again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was that 85 year. That 84, Doc comes up. 83, you get Keith in the trade. You got Darryl. 84 is Doc, and Doc is lights out in 85, and you frankly, the Mets, I think, took the lead at one point late in the season, so they were neck and neck with the Cardinals. Mookie goes down midsummer with needing shoulder surgery, which actually an arthroscopic shoulder surgery, but pretty dicey surgery in 1985, because of the way the technology is, right? But he does come back. And I want to read this excerpt that I think was really interesting. It's by Keith Hernandez. It's Keith's first book called If at First, A Season with the Mets. And basically in this book, he recaps every single game from that season. But there's this one excerpt, September 12th, 1985. Mets playing the Cardinals, big series out in Shea. And then he writes, in this afternoon's first inning, Mookie, by working out a walk, verifies something I was just about to conclude anyway. He's more selective at the plate since his return. He saw Dykstra help the team with some strategic leadoff walks, and he realized he would get better pitches to hit by getting ahead in the count. The ball club had forgotten how valuable Mookie is. We thought choosing between Dykstra and Wilson might be a tough decision, but as good and as invaluable a job that Dykstra did for us for almost 2 months, he's not Mookie Wilson. And Mookie is strong and fresh. For him, this is now July. So I think that's pretty interesting commentary about, the impact that Mookie has on the team, one, and two, a little interesting that you would see that kind of writing about a temeate. That's something you would see maybe like 3-4 years after, but the If at First is printed the next season, so I can only imagine what the discussion was between Lenny and Keith, assuming Lenny even read it.
I'm sure he probably reads it every night these days just to fuel the fire, because he continues to be in the news, Mr. Lenny Dykstra. But that is a multi-part episode for another time for sure. Definitely.
But yeah, really interesting to see how invaluable the the team realized, and I guess let me take that back. It's almost like, yeah, okay, Mookie's down, but not a big deal. We got Lenny, and you kind of take Mookie for granted, and maybe that's a good way to think about it. Did we take him for granted?
Yeah, and I didn't realize how many times Mookie had to deal with these injuries, that he was out for a significant period of time over the years. So, that brought us to spring of '86. He actually got a ball thrown during base running drills by Rafael Santana right in the eye. So I'm familiar with that, how that feels, except he needed to be carted off the field and had 21 stitches. So
oh my goodness,
he missed a couple of months there. And when he came back in May, he became the left fielder, with Lenny Dykstra being the leadoff hitter and center fielder for the Mets.
It's funny because I wasn't able to play early in '86, and Lenny was the next guy in line. Jobs come and go in baseball. I must admit, though, I thought that there was a little bit of unfairness there. I thought that when I was able to come back to play, that I would just step right in and my job would be there. Well, that wasn't the case. So I really didn't get a chance to talk about that a whole lot because no one really asked about it a whole lot. But it was no fault of Lenny's. I mean, he and I were players. We were playing for the same, same ownership, and we were trying to accomplish the same things. And for me to hold anything against him would have been very, very unfair. I helped him when I could, for what it was worth. But I thought we played very well together, and both of us handled the situation very, very well.
I talk about being snake bitten. I mean, that's a very odd injury to have. And maybe Chase Utley is now retired, but maybe they should have taken a couple lessons. We'll save Chase Utley for another day, because that's a whole different.
We might have to
discussion.
trip him on the way to a press box someday. I think that might be our only retribution against Chase Utley at this point.
But nonetheless, interesting. Despite that injury, he comes back and is a really important part of the Mets' success that year.
Yeah, the Mets ended up winning the division by 21 and a half games. So
ran away with it, baby.
That's the landslide that we're looking for these days. No Rolaids commercial there.
No. And at some point we will do a 86 Mets episode. I think we have to. Maybe we look at just the fights from that season. I mean, you could do multiple episodes on that 86 Mets team.
We could literally do a watch along just for the Mookie at bat. I mean, and that would take up half an episode probably. But I didn't realize, in the NLCS against Houston, he only batted 115. The things that this play that his tapper to first base became this ultimate deodorant for probably everything else that he did in the playoffs here.
Well, and again, I don't have it in front of me, but I want to say Mookie had a huge hit, even though he was batting 115. I think in Game 6 when they clinched, right? Because they didn't want to go to Game 7 because if they had to play Mike Scott,
would have been over. 7. Yeah,
I think they were down 3 and bottom in the 9th or top in the 9th. I think Dykstra gets a double or single, gets on, but Mookie, I want to say, gets a double or triple. So his one hit may have been that hit. So it goes to show you, doesn't matter what the number is. It's what you do.
Yeah,
or when you do.
It's exactly, especially in the playoffs. It's just coming through clutch. We all know 86.
Speaking of clutch,
yeah,
you get to game 7, game 6 of the 86 World Series. I remember seeing episodes or interviews. Obviously I didn't see the game live. I was 4 years old, but seeing these interviews and seeing Mookie saying, I didn't want to be the last out. I did not want to be the last out. I was not going to be the last out. And that's, that little spark plug of his, and dedication. So big at bat though. I mean, big at bat.
And I got to tell you, for years or for whatever, didn't realize, or, you don't realize that that's actually Game 6. A lot of people, especially if you're just talking about the curse and things like that, they're like, oh, that has to be Game 7. That has to be the end of the series. But just lengthened the series and gave the Mets a shot. That was just Game 6, and the curse needed a little more love in Game 7 to put the hammer down.
Definitely. So I'm actually looking for the pages, so I apologize here, but in Davy Johnson's autobiography, The Art of the Comeback, actually, no, that's the name of the chapter. Davy Johnson's My Wild Ride in Baseball and Beyond. If you haven't read it, go out of your way. It's actually a really good read. We'll probably do an episode on Davy as well, because it's quite an amazing story outside of the Mets. But he writes in his book of that at bat, and I won't go through everything here, but Mookie comes up to bat here, kind of set the stage here a little bit. Talks about Schiraldi, and here he goes. Wilson loved swinging at anything that was remotely near the strike zone. If he could reach it, he was swinging at it. Usually it was 2 or 3 pitches, and he was either on base or sitting back in the dugout. But in this particular at-bat, he was completely locked in. The at-bat from the dugout seemed like it lasted an hour. There is no question in my mind it was Mookie's longest at-bat I had ever seen. So really interesting from Davy's perspective. And I had to think about it. Yeah, you're right. Like, there's just so much that happened in that at bat between Schiraldi's wild pitch, the ball gets past Gedman, Kevin Mitchell scores, Ray Knight makes it all the way to second. I mean, it was pretty lengthy. The only other at bat I could think of that is on a similar high pressure situation is Sean Dunstan's at bat in '99 in that Grand Slam single game. Sean Dunston leads off that inning and fouls off God only knows how many pitches and draws the walk. So that's where my mind went.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I would have been able to handle that live as like a baseball fan adult. It seems like that would have been a lot to handle, each pitch. But, jumping up and down, the craziness that we experienced in 2006, just dealing with those like highs and lows of that playoff, I can only imagine that pretty much happened in one at bat in the 86 World Series Game 6.
So going on in this, I mean, Johnson writes, the drama and the tension mounted some more as Mookie fouled off the next 2 pitches. But then on the 7th pitch, as far as I'm concerned, we won the game and the World Series. Interesting. With Red Sox catcher Rich Gedman set up outside, Stanley threw one inside. So it was Bob Stanley, not Schiraldi. So I screwed that one up. Just missing hitting Mookie for a wild pitch to bring home Mitch with the tying run and move Knight at second base. The crowd noise was deafening, and you could feel the vibrations under your feet. Just pure pandemonium at Shea Stadium.
Calvin Schiraldi couldn't do it, and it's up to Bob Stanley, and it's up to Mookie Wilson, and the crowd is alive again, and Rick Aguilera praying that he'll get off the hook. Tension mounts some more with 2 out in the 10th. 5-4 Red Sox. Ray Knight at first. Kevin Mitchell at third. 2-2 to Mookie Wilson. And it's going to go to the backstop. Here comes Mitchell to score the tying run. And Ray Knight is at second base.
We haven't even gotten to like the big one, right? Moving on here. The Red Sox were completely frazzled at this point. 2 pitches later, Knight was leading way far off the second base, and Marty Barrett cut across the bag, waiting for a pickoff. But there was one problem. Stanley missed the sign given by Gedman to throw over there.
5-5 in a delirious 10th inning. Line drive foul.
And Marty Barrett was out of position because they had Knight really picked up, but Stanley didn't see him. There it is again. You see, he just reaches for the ball. Down goes Mookie. It kind of sailed inside. And here comes Barrett in to talk to Stanley because had Mookie hit just a weak ground ball, Barrett was way out of position because they had a good chance to get Knight at second base.
That's interesting. I never knew that. Had Stanley picked up the sign, it likely would have ended the inning right there. After the wild pitch, Mookie had fouled off the next 2 pitches. Oh my God, what are we? But then finally on pitch 10. So, okay, Davey just answered it for us. Yeah. 10 pitches.
Yeah.
He put the ball in play and solidified his place in Mets lore.
You believe this ball game at Shea?
Oh, brother.
So the winning run is at second base with 2 out, 3-2 to Mookie Wilson. Little roller up along first, behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
Before I read more, what do you remember about that?
That at bat.
Yeah, I mean, I know we kind of talked about it just now, but I mean,
my goodness, you relive the moment every time, especially as a Met fan, just knowing how it feels, and you're just literally each pitch, and then you're like, oh, so you're saying there's a chance we are so you're saying there's a chance we are that team, and I think it's no coincidence that that's from Dumb and Dumber. But we are definitely that team. Like, you know, I watch all of these playoff games to the end for the Mets, no matter how much they're down by, because it's that thing, you know, it could be a wild pickoff attempt. There could be a pass ball. Something could happen. Oh, yeah, you know,
exactly.
And it actually happened in 86. So it's kind of fueling that fire. I mean, it's just, even when you watch, it's just incredible. And of course, the rumbling of Shea Stadium, which is infamous, you know, the ground moving in Shea Stadium.
One of my favorite parts from watching that clip, though, from that at bat is not even the little roller. It's the old lady that sat in the back. I don't know if you remember her doing the little wheels on the bus. I don't know. That's what I always remember. But anyhow, look that up, folks, if you don't know what I'm talking about. Mookie gets a little dribbler first base, and then here's what Davey says. He says, you know, with Mookie's speed and with his body already going toward first base as he pulled the ball, it was a recipe for disaster for the Red Sox. I thought Wilson had a great chance to beat it out, but we'll never know for sure because Buckner went down to field the ball, skidded it under his glove, and rolled into right field. Knight came around the base. We won the game, completing the greatest comeback in World Series history.
So 2 things. First, do you think that's where Ichiro learned how to hit? By watching that one Mookie Wilson at that, where like, you know, Ichiro's like 3/4 to first base by the time he swings.
Always possible.
That was
Always
interesting.
Possible.
And then Knight coming around third base. What if something happens to Knight coming around third base?
Don't pull a hamstring.
Don't sprain an ankle.
Last week we talked about Timo Perez jumping up and down before catching the ball, the final out. My God, what if Knight would have like tore a hamstring?
Exactly. Pulled something.
And, you know, one thing that we don't talk about and haven't talked about yet, and I know 86 gets a lot of attention and rightfully so, but the person that Mookie Wilson was, I mean, he was just a good, wholesome, and it's kind of hard to believe that he played on the 86 Mets team with all those crazy people, but salt of the earth guy. You know, one example of that is in Jay Horowitz's book, Mr. Matt. He talks about, you know, after they won the World Series, the players voted to give him a player's share, which was $93,000 in 1986, which is crazy. You know, he felt really embarrassed to do it. But apparently it was Keith Hernandez and Mookie Wilson that really spearheaded the vote in Jay's favor. And according to Mookie, he writes that, you know, Jay remembers Jay was worried about accepting the honor, but to be very honest with you, you know, Jay was really concerned and asked us not to do it, but we insisted. Jay was one of us. We knew management didn't really like it. There you go. The Will Palms, even back then in 86. But they didn't come to us and say a thing about it. That was the kind of guy Jay was. He took care of us, and we wanted to take care of him and show our appreciation. So there's that, standing up for his, you know, guys that deserved it. And then the other piece is that after the 86 World Series, there were some riots, believe it or not, at the University of Massachusetts. And it turns out that, you know, what started as a Mets Red Sox, you know, kind of trash talking really had some serious racial undertones. So in his book, Jay writes that, first of all, I always thought that Mookie Wilson could have run for the United States Congress and not only won, but done a great job. So, I mean, that alone is I believe it, you know, especially today in today's world. But because of that, MLB decided that they needed to send a Mets player and a Red Sox player to Amherst to hold a discussion on race. And the Mets decided to send Mookie, and the Red Sox sent Marty Barrett. According to Jay, that was an experience I'll never forget. Spending the day with Bart Giamatti, who is gracious and humble. And on top of that, Mookie was incredibly gracious. The next day, the Philadelphia Inquirer wrote 2 champions, one black, one white, one from the Mets, one from the Sox, visited yesterday as peacemakers. In a packed auditorium of the University of Massachusetts, black outfielder Mookie Wilson of the World Series champion New York Mets, entered a mixed race audience of about 650 students to, in Barrett's words, combine with each other, live with each other. Even in Massachusetts, where the Sox had just lost, there were a lot of Mookie fans. Wilson was greeted affectionately by a low-pitched chorus of "Moo," told the students. Mookie later said that the team spirit, rah, 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 that's what we have to do when it comes to the racial undertones.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah, I did not know that about Mookie, but just crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, the race thing was still going on in the 80s.
Nothing has changed in 40 years, 35 years.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
But I think Mookie would be a great politician. I think there's still time, a little bit of time left for Mookie to be maybe a little congressman or something.
He's got my vote.
Absolutely.
He definitely has my vote. And the thing is, and now I know I'm bouncing, so I apologize a little bit, but we talk about our April games. I feel like over the last 2005, so that's about, over the last 15 years, we've gone to at least 8, maybe more April games.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always seems to be around Jackie Robinson Day, because that tends to be where the Mets play a Saturday game inevitably. And it's always, well, I don't want to say always, but most of the time it's Mookie Wilson who's there with Mrs. Rachel Robinson as kind of the MC of ceremonies. So, continues to be involved, and there just needs to be more people like Mookie.
Yeah, he's totally a great guy. And that is why he gets the dedicated episode for Mookie Wilson.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So what do you say we keep going on with his career here? Because
that's right. I mean, we know really all about 86. We could celebrate 86 for a while, but the next season is 87, and the Mets actually acquired Kevin McReynolds. So again, a logjam in the outfield. So both Wilson and Lenny Dykstra were both upset, and Wilson actually requested a trade. Did not get one, but he requested a trade, and then ended up hitting a career high 299 while platooning with Lenny Dykstra in center field.
It's always interesting how some of these players just, when they platoon, it almost was like that with the Mets in 2015 between, Lagares. Now I'm gonna totally blank, but I feel like Lagares was in a platoon, and it worked better, in the sense that he wasn't an everyday player, but you put him in the best spot to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, not everything is the Shane Spencer, Kareem Garcia platoon in right field.
Yes, thank God.
But sometimes they work out. So yeah, I didn't realize that him and Lenny played together a lot too. So there's a scary collision, which harkened back to the Cameron and Beltran collision. Not as much.
What was this collision? I've heard stories of it. I actually don't think I've ever even seen it.
It was 87.
87. Okay.
Yeah, and it sounds
and he
like
broke
it was
his jaw.
Barber.
Did he break his jaw? Right. That was
it looks terrible, but I think they hung onto the ball, which is of course all that matters.
Line drive, left center, well hit, Dykstra. Oh boy, Dykstra and Wilson collide. We don't know whether the ball was caught or not.
Thank you, Mookie.
Mookie, always the consummate professional. So, really moving along in his career, he had a rough year in 88, was only hitting 234. And then, going into August, his dog days of summer and home stretch, he actually turned it on. It seemed it seemed like Mookie would turn it on at times. He's the ultimate streaky player, it seems like.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, towards the end of the season. And that was the year that they won 100 games. So that was that 88 team.
That 88 team, in some ways, is the 2006 team because, they owned the Dodgers, owned them. And then, I think they went 10-1 that season. And then they get,
bounced.
And the 2006 Mets, owned the Cardinals, yet, alas, it just wasn't meant to be.
Nope. So that brought an end to their 1988 season. Mookie became a free agent at the end of the year, and then the Mets actually picked up his option. Go figure. But again, started off slow in 89. He was batting just 199 through the first 52 games, and then the Mets acquired Juan Samuel from the Philadelphia Phillies. In exchange for Dykstra, McDowell. Oh, that was it.
The beginning of the end. That really was the beginning of the end and the end of an era in many ways. I actually remember that trade, that day happening. I actually think they were playing the Phillies. So if I'm not mistaken, they
just moved locker rooms, grabbed their things and went across the locker room.
Fairly certain that's what happened. We'll have to look that up on the old Baseball Reference. But Juan Samuel just was not meant to be. What I do remember is Mookie being traded to the Blue Jays that season. Do you know who he was traded for?
I saw who it was, but I was surprised actually.
I remember Jeff Musselman for two reasons. All right, this is technically 6-year-old Ray, but really 7-year-old because my birthday is October, so I feel like. This is
you had the maturity
August.
of a 7-year-old at the time.
Exactly. Always mature, much more mature than my age. But I remember Musselman for two reasons. One, he was a terrible relief pitcher. Welcome to the Mets. But two, he had a blue glove. I had never seen that before. And it made sense because he came from the Blue Jays. So clearly his glove, matched his jersey. But that's what I remember about Jeff Musselman. I don't necessarily remember a game that he pitched in or an outing other than he wasn't anything special, but it was the freaking blue glove that I will always remember.
Now, do you think so kind of rewinding back to that 88 NLCS, was that amongst the darkest, like, let's say 10-year period for the Mets between like 88 and 98 or was there any real success in between there? Did they do anything between 88 and 98? I don't think they did.
That was
those are some dark days. And Juan Samuel is all to blame.
Of course. What was worse about that is that they were like, first of all, incredibly dark days because it's the worst team money can buy. You've got the strike, you've got Generation K, failing, but they teased you a little bit in 89. They teased you a little bit in 90 and just a little bit in 91. But all downhill from there.
Yeah, and it's funny you so often hear Keith voice his frustration about those post 86 teams and how what should have been in those years.
Oh, definitely. They easily should have won. 87. Just bad luck. Okay. Hangover circumstances, even though they were in it, they lose Darling to a broken hand. 88, they should have won. There's no reason why, they lost to the Dodgers. The reason was Oral Hershiser, but so easily should have had at least 2 championships under their belt, if not more.
So we figure we go ahead and get Hershiser like 10 years later to make it all all better.
Played a key role in that Grand Slam single game, by the way.
That's right. He helped the team out in 99.
We'll have to do that game. Maybe that'll be the watch along, a nice 6-hour watch along. Just what we like.
Perfect. So like Ray said, Mookie was traded to the Blue Jays for Jeff Musselman and a minor league pitcher. And then actually ended up, so that was in 89 and he had the starting center field job all the way until 91 when a young man named Devin White came and Devon White, maybe. I don't know. I'm a wrestling fan. I'm going to go Devon. Devon, get the table White. Ended up being a center fielder and he was solid.
Yeah. I feel bad for Mookie when I looked at this timeline though, because he just missed out on another ring because the Blue Jays of 92, 93 were, back-to-back championships. Did they win in 90? Yeah, they won in 92.
92 is
92. They beat the Braves. 93, they beat the Phillies with the Wild Thing home run. So yes, so Mookie was so close to another ring.
Yeah,
That's his playing career.
That was it. I mean, he kind of dabbled around and almost got signed by a team in 92, but ended up retiring in 92 the way, most players don't want to retire. It's just kind of, he was hanging around and nobody wanted to pick him up. So kind of a sad ending to his professional career.
Yeah, well, his professional playing career. I mean,
that's right.
Let's not forget he was yay close to, also, joining Bud Harrelson as the only members of, to play and potentially win a championship, because in 2000 he was on the first base coach for the Mets. We did our 2000 episode last week. Check it out in the archives. But, think about it as a coach. Let's think about this here. Roger Cedeno breaks the team record for stolen bases. Mookie Wilson's the coach, first base coach. Lance Johnson, Lance Johnson was 96, and Mookie was a first base coach for the team for a couple of years there. So you start thinking about the influence he had on some of those some of those players and some of the records that are broken.
Yeah, he was essentially training players to break his record.
Yeah,
if you think about it that way, he was coaching base running to break his club record, which is very interesting.
That's awesome. That is incredibly awesome. Here's a fun fact for you. Mookie Wilson gets inducted to the Hall of Fame of all days, the Mets Hall of Fame of all days, September 1st, because it's the number one, 1996. I was at that game, and it was awesome. A couple of memories that pop up to mind, like, man, first of all, John, if you and I were friends, we I would have taken you, but instead I took a friend named Royce.
Royce, he's like one of those guys that got traded for and doesn't even have a Wikipedia. That's what we're gonna say about Royce.
Yes. My friend Royce with my grandfather, it was awesome. But my dad had these, like, one of his customers or clients had season tickets, and those teams were so bad that my dad would get the tickets for free, and my dad just never wanted to go to the games. So it was me and my grandfather, and a friend of your choosing. But that game, it was $1 hot dogs. So all the hot dogs were $1 in Mookie Wilson's, honor. All the drinks were $1, soft drinks. The thing about the hot dogs, though, they were ice cold. That's what happens when you get to the stadium.
Keep up with the demand, They couldn't keep up with the demand.
That was probably it, so that was my lesson learned, and I think it still applies at CitiField, that when you go to a game to go see batting practice, make sure you watch batting practice, give it a little bit before you actually get a hot dog, because odds are those dogs are just starting during batting practice.
Yeah, let them cook. Let them cook,
folks.
Get yourself a nice little spot for batting practice, and then come around on your way to your seats and grab a hot one.
But, that game was awesome. Maybe we'll make you do that episode, possibly, because I'll remember they played the Expos, very cold, windy day, which, is just right up my alley. I believe there was a storm coming. It's true. Like a hurricane was supposed to be coming up the coast, but it was the early start of it. So very windy. Awesome ceremony before the field. They did one of those music video tributes, and it was That's What Friends Are For.
My goodness. They broke out Burt Bacharach written.
Is that like Diana Ross and
and Stevie
John?
Wonder was in there? Yes.
Yeah. So that was the video that was played to that music. And they had all these former players, with words of wisdom, thank you, Mookie. Sorry, couldn't be there. Jesse Orozco was the only person in a Baltimore Orioles hat. So he was the only player playing. And so those are some of the images I remember from that ceremony. Mets won that game, by the way. I think that may have been my first ever walk-off game, or second. It was actually my second. I'll tell you about my first one another time. But, John Franco blew the save, gets tossed out. Bobby V almost gets tossed out. Crowd, a lot of heat. And the Mets come back to win the game in the bottom of the ninth. I think Andy Tomberlin, who is a left-handed hitting outfielder, gets the game-winning hit. So
that might be the first and the last reference in this podcast for Andy.
Yeah. Well, unless we talk about the 96 Mets again, but anyway.
I didn't realize Jesse Orozco was still playing in 96.
Yeah. Well, I forgot to tell you last week, that actually is a good opener because, I totally forgot. Jesse Orozco was on the 2000 Mets.
That's right. See, that I remember. I don't know what they were doing with Jesse Orozco in 2000, but
he was on the 2000 Mets, and they traded him for Joe McEwing. So there's that.
Look, they got value from Jesse Orozco. So Wilson, went on to be probably the most popular first base coach in Mets history. He was the first base coach from 96 to 2002. And then he ended up getting kicked around. 2003, 2004 was on the rookie league team, managing Kingsport, and then he managed the Brooklyn Cyclones the next year. So I know there was a lot of mystery around him no longer being the first base coach. Who came in 2002 that Mookie wasn't the first page coach? Who was it? Art Howe?
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll blame it on Art Howe.
What I do know, though, what kills me, unfortunately, they, the Wilpons go off and screw up the relationship, and it burns because in 2006, Mets Cardinals Preston Wilson, his stepson, and also his nephew, is on the Cardinals, and I just remember the images of Mookie Wilson, celebrating with the Cardinals in 2006, really celebrating with Preston, but I think there was just so much disdain that he, was anti-Mets at that time.
Yeah, and he was probably absolutely thrilled that his son, his son did it, and we're just we could never win it. That's all. We could just never get out of the way.
But you know what? I will not hold that against Mookie because I just a great man. I mean, that's really all I could say. Or like I said early on, big part of my childhood. So I guess I ask you, John, where does now that we've kind of gone through his career a little bit, where does Mookie Wilson stay for you?
He is one of those. Oh, he's one of those all-time Mets. He's probably top 2 or 3 center fielders in Mets history, and he's one of the guys that could just walk into any room in New York, and I don't want to say he's above Matteau, right? He's this. He I think he did more overall than Stephane Matteau, but you've got those icons in Mets in New York, not even just Mets history.
Absolutely,
and especially with the fans, a total fan favorite. So super regarded, and maybe he will be a politician. He was ordained in 2014. He's a Baptist minister now, so.
He's a Renaissance man. And, the last thing I'll say on Mookie, and we were there, the 20th anniversary of the 86 Mets. And I guess I didn't realize in my own naivety, or whatever the word is there, Keith Hernandez starts to give remarks and he says, thank you for coming, everyone, but I'm not going to deliver a speech. I'm going to turn it over to the one player that was a big part of our team and was here for the dark times and here for the good times. And he turned it over to Mookie Wilson to give the remarks on behalf of the 86 Mets. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. And he's a super classy guy. And I know he actually had a relationship with Bill Buckner after all that went down. And you want to talk about incredible. I mean, that just shows the type of guy that Mookie was. And I know you had seen some writings about Mookie from Buckner's death.
Yeah, when Mookie died, when Bill Buckner died, Mookie, his statement was that we had a friendship that lasted well over 30 years. I felt badly for some of the things he went through. Bill was a great baseball player whose legacy should never be defined by one play.
And that's one thing you heard over and over again about Bill Buckner. And as someone who didn't really experience it as an adult and knowing baseball at the time, was what a great guy he was and what a great baseball player he was. And then you're stuck with this forever.
Yeah.
But it's really amazing to see the friendship that they developed. So
absolutely.
Super crazy.
And thanks to that play, we have the name of a podcast.
That's right. Thanks, Vin Scully. That's for sure.
All right, John. Well, I guess that pretty much wraps it up. That was a lot of fun, I thought, going down memory lane on the Mookster.
Absolutely. And let's start the retire the number one movement. Let's do it.
Uncle Stevie is no longer on Twitter, but I think, maybe we'll get our 29 followers to, start a little campaign. I would be down for that.
Small but mighty.
Or at least $1 hot dog night.
At least give us an hour with dollar hot dogs, please.
All right, John. Well, I guess that does another episode of Behind the Bag. I don't know. I could do it in the count, but 3, 2, 1. John,
drive home safe, everybody.